everyone, welcome again as we continue studying the book of Daniel. So we've done verses 1 to 8. Today we will continue verses 9, 10, 11, and 12. Verse 9 says, "Now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs." Remember in verse 8 where Daniel purposes in his heart. Daniel decides to be faithful to his God. In verse 9, we see how God is working behind the scenes. So now God, behind the scenes, is building this friendship between Daniel and the prince of the eunuchs. I find this amazing because when you purpose, when you decide to be faithful to God, you don't see how God behind the scenes is already preparing a way to facilitate your desire to obey Him. It's really amazing. If you've never tried, why don't you try it? Decide to be faithful to God and see how God already, before your decision is taken, He's already working out the events in your life to help you fulfill your desire of obedience. So in verse 9, there's this friendship that is developing, or that has already been developing, between Daniel and the prince of eunuchs. And so now Daniel, when he decides to be faithful to God, he doesn't only wait on God. He takes the initiative to go and talk to the prince of the eunuchs. And listen to what he says in verse 10. "And the prince of the eunuchs said, 'I fear the Lord the king, who has appointed your meat and your drink. For why should he see your faces worse liking than the children which are of your sort? Then shall he make me endanger my head to the king.'" Daniel goes to the prince of the eunuchs and starts talking to him. He's making a request. But the prince of the eunuchs reacts to the request that Daniel has. And he says, "Well, I am afraid of the king. You see, the king has appointed me that I have to feed you a certain diet. And if I go against the king, because he's going to see that your faces, you don't look healthy because you're not eating what the king has provided for you, then the king is going to get angry at me and he's going to cut my head." As much as the prince of the eunuchs wanted to help Daniel, he's afraid for his life. He admires the decision of Daniel, a young boy, only 16 years old, remember? He's very young. And a young boy that takes a decision to be faithful to his God, even the prince of the eunuchs admires that. But of course, he has a job and his boss is the king of Babylon. Verse 11 continues, "Then said Daniel to Melzan, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah." Now Daniel continues and goes and speaks to Melzar, the person that is responsible for the 4 young men, the 4 Hebrew slaves that were brought from Judea to Babylon. Now in verse 12, Daniel answers. Listen to what he says. "Prove thy servants, I beseech thee." You know, another word for beseech is I beg you. Please try this for 10 days and let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink. Now Daniel uses all his negotiation skills to talk to Melzan and says, "Please, I beg you, why don't you try my diet for only 10 days? You don't need to do it more than 10 days. And once we try it for 10 days, then you decide if our faces, if our physical bodies look worse than the rest of the young men that are eating what the king is providing, then we stop. We just stop the diet. But please, can you please try 10 days? Give us only water to drink and pulse." Do you know what pulse is? It's really vegetables. So Daniel's diet is a vegan diet because he actually only eats the fruit of the land and plain, simple water to drink. What do you think is going to happen after 10 days? I mean, Daniel is putting aside for 10 days the amazing diet of the king. The finest meats, the finest drinks and wines. And he only wants vegetables and water. I don't know. I have my doubts. How about you? Well, if you want to know what happens, what's going to happen to Daniel and his 4 friends, you have to join me next time as we continue to read and study the book of Daniel. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.